Okay, and I will be letting people in as we go along. The session is going to be, we have some fantastic speakers this morning, and each of the speakers will be giving a presentation. And at the end, we will have some time for discussion, but we're going to move from one speaker to the next without questions in between, just because we have got so much to get through and we want you to hear each of the speakers. As way of introduction, the reason we chose this topic is because being strong and building resilience when we live with an impairment and or have a close relationship with someone with an impairment in a disabling world, it's so important to stay strong and can be so difficult. And I think back to some of the biggest challenges I had as a parent and remember how hard it was to keep my perspective and protect the strong and loving bonds within my family. Just letting someone else in. I recall sitting in a meeting surrounded by people I'd never met before, fighting for my son's right to remain in mainstream education where he was happy and in the same school as his sister. I remember the hostility and the lack of appreciation for my son's gifts. It was all about what he couldn't do. I had to push away such negativity and not let it get inside me. I recall the time I read a letter from some consultants describing me as a problem. They thought that my actions of keeping my son at home rather than sending him to a residential school 300 miles away was detrimental to his life expectancy. I made this decision after I'd been told he didn't have long to live. I wanted his precious time to be at home with his family. I didn't have too much of a problem pushing that one away, but I remember the feeling it gave me to this day. I recall the times he was in hospital and all the support we generally had when he was at home was stopped. I would ask that it be maintained, but my request was always refused. This meant that I had to make the choice of staying in hospital with him and keeping him safe, or leaving my young daughter with others at a time that was difficult for her too. I recall the time when he was in the last stages of his life and we were looking for palliative care support at home. We were visited by a palliative care team who said they couldn't take him on, they couldn't support us as they didn't know how long he was going to live. And so on. Such incidences take their toll. Luckily for me, my son and daughter inspired me to dig deep and find creative solutions. I found I had to shape our own path and be true to myself and my children, rather than fitting into the dominant cultural idea of what would be best. And doing that, going our own way, we were able to have magic moments in our lives. And those magical moments gave us all the strength and resilience to live our lives to the full. I would now like to introduce you to Abdi, who is going to speak to us about being limitless. Abdi, over to you.
Hello. Why would you limit yourself when you are limitless? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I hope 2021 will be the best year for you yet. My name is Abdi Omar and I am the founder, director, CEO of Abdi Enterprises. Today, I will prove to you that you are truly limitless. For the next 20 minutes, I want you to be selfish. That's right. I said selfish. Before you call me crazy, let me explain. Some people will give you advice to live average life, go university, and get good job. Finally, settle down with a family. Excuse my French. It is load of crap. Just because they did it, this doesn't mean that you must do it. You deserve better. Don't pick just one thing to have in your life because you can have everything that you want. Great health, great family of your own, impacting your community, your environment and family in a positive way. You can be someone people want to look up to. Ladies and gentlemen, let us make something clear. No one will come in your life to push you to do what you love because it is your life. It's your responsibility. So you must be hungry to be better every day. Before I continue, let me answer your questions. Abdielma, why would I take your advice? How are you talking? Why do you have a grey dot on your head? Fantastic questions. I will answer them now. At age of 4, I moved from Somalia. My parents knew if we stayed in Somalia, I will not live life to the fullest in any third world countries. If you have a disability, you will have a disadvantage in life. It is unfair, but it is the truth. Society will reject who you are because you are different. I will be honest with you guys. If you have a disability in third world countries, then you will not have any hope for the future because all you will think about, how will I survive to see tomorrow? How can you dream if you are surviving? It is worse. If you are an adult with a disability, people will see your disability, not your abilities. When you ask for a job, please imagine you are in their shoes. Every time you step outside of your house, then the world is against you. When you are trying to do something good for yourself, somehow people keep knocking you down because they think you don't deserve it just because you have a disability. This is why I am extremely grateful for my parents, because they gave up their future so I can have a life which I can live how I want. May Allah have mercy on my dad's soul because he saved up a lot of money to send my mum and me to the UK. Straight away, it was the best decision ever as a parent. Not only our life changed, but our world changed too. The UK government gave us a lot of things. In Somalia, we have dreamt of a house, money to live on, and a suitable wheelchair. Ladies and gentlemen, there are millions of people with disability in third world countries don't leave their house because they don't have a wheelchair. Already my life improved. In some people view education as something you get automatically in developed countries, but in third world countries, it comes rarely. I am talking about people without disabilities. However, if you have a disability, it is about how hard will your family fight for your future. If you know someone in power, then your life gets easier. But if you don't, you should prepare for very rough life. It is about who you know, not what you know. When I started school, it was my most difficult day of my life. I didn't know a word of English. When I saw my mum leaving me at school, I got scared. Being a foreigner and disabled wasn't easy for me because I didn't know how I can tell teachers or staffs what I need or want. However, when lunch came, my eyes lit up like it was New Year. But soon after, I understood that I hated mashed potato with green beans. When I came home, I ate like I was two people. However, when weeks went by, then slowly I became confident. Despite not speaking, I had a lot of things to say. And the teacher saw this, and she had a conversation with speech and language therapist to find me a way to communicate. The speech and language therapist understood that I had a great head movements. After a while, she came in my classroom with a communication book with a light pointer. I know I am showing my age. Ladies and gentlemen, when you can speak for yourself, personally, I strongly believe that it is unbelievable, especially as a disabled person. Soon after, My teacher and staff saw that I am making unbelievable progress with how I communicate, and they understood I needed a new communication method to grow as a person. After a while, I had a session with speech and language therapist, and she introduced a new communication device. It was my first oh my God moment. It looks like this. When I heard myself speaking, time stopped for a second, because I never believed that I will have a voice. Already I achieved the impossible. I received my first communication aid. It was called Pathfinder, and it was the most boring thing ever, but it did the job. Soon after, my teacher called my parents to meet her next day. I was a good student. Sometime I was a troublemaker. So the day came. I went with my parents to meet my teacher. She said she would put me in a mainstream class with students without disabilities. Ladies and gentlemen, when I looked at my parents, they started crying with happiness. It was one of the greatest days in my life. Saying that, I thought my teacher threw me into the deepest part of sea and hope I could swim, not sink. Anyway, I decided to go with it. When my supporter opened the class door and went in, I knew all eyes was on me, as I heard from students, "What's wrong with him? Why can't he talk? Why is he on a wheelchair?" Do you want to know what made it worse? When I went to the playground, I saw the children running and playing football, while I am on my wheelchair just watching them. Words cannot describe how I felt. I still remember some nights. I used to cry about my disability because I couldn't handle it. I talked to my dad one evening. I told him that I wanted to go back to my old class. The advice he gave me, I still live by them. He said, "You can't outrun non-disability people, but you can outsmart them." At that moment, my view on life changed. Instead worrying about students' thoughts, I started being myself. In your life, if you worry about people's thoughts about who you are, then you are wasting your time, because you can't control how people think about you. People will hate you, and will try to break your spirit, but if you ignore them and continue what you are doing, then you will succeed. Always be yourself, because you are unique. My one-to-one supporter told me to talk more because she understood that I could do more. So I did. Ladies and gentlemen, a week later, I became the class clown. I worked my hardest every day. Ladies and gentlemen, a year later, I won the Student of the Year. Am I showing off? Yes, a bit, but I told you guys this because I strongly believe that having a disability is not a disability if you accept it. I believe that the only disability in life is a bad attitude, because a bad attitude is like a flat tire. If you don't change it, then you will never go anywhere. Let us fast forward to secondary school, the Vale School. Every morning I went to school happy. I know, I was strange. Immediately I felt that I was in a family who wanted to push me, because they knew that I will succeed with some adjustments. Straight away, they said, "Abdi Omar, you will go to mainstream class." I replied with, "Show me the way," because I knew that I can thrive and prove the students wrong once again. I met Anthony, who was a staff member. Every Wednesday, I joined a mixed martial arts club called Sanjuro. I used to think Anthony disliked me because he made me work harder than the rest. Every Wednesday, I used to sleep like a baby. Quitting was looking good at that time. But I kept going and gave 100% because I never quitted before, and I am not going to start now. Now I know why Anthony pushed me harder than the rest. It is because he knew I could do it. Please understand. Pushing yourself will always benefit you. You need to realize that every day is a second chance to try again and go one step closer of being successful. During my time at the Vale School, I learned that my disability is never a disadvantage until I believe it is. So no more crying at nights and no more being jealous on the playground. There was a lot of staffs like Anthony who disciplined and kept pushing me to be better. I am very grateful for everything that they did for me, because they gave me a foundation that I can build on after I left them. The most important lesson that I learned during my time was giving up is never an option for me. Also, having a disability is never a disadvantage. I learned one more thing. It was, family is not only blood related. This is where things get interesting. Let us fast forward to college. I passed business level 1 and media level 2 with flying colors. The next course I wanted to do was ICT level 3, but the enrollment was difficult to get in because of the head ICT faculty. He thought I can't handle it just because I was on a wheelchair. But I was very grateful to have a great supporter because he tried to put me in the course and he did it on the last day. In the first months I was doing good, but around December, I didn't handle the work and I seriously wanted to give up. I told it to my supporter called Kalpesh. He took me to a room and talked to me. He said, "Do you know how hard I tried to put you in the course? Now you want to give up. You will pass it with or without my help. We must prove the ICT head, but you can do it." At that moment, I decided that I won't give up. Later on, that day, I was on my bed and I was thinking to myself, I can do anything, but it will take me a bit longer. I understood if you are disabled, then some people will doubt you because they think that you can't do it. I believe you have two options. The first one is you can believe them and give up or prove them wrong and show them that having a disability cannot stop you. I came to understand that I had to work twice as hard just to keep up with other students. Every night I go to 9 p.m. to bed as I had homework. I hated most days. But in life you need to do what is needed, not what you want, to get the result that you want. I am very delighted to tell you guys that I passed the course. I came to college as a boy and left as a determined man. I will tell you guys something shocking. I am very grateful what the head of ICT did. That's right. You heard it correct. Let me explain myself very clearly. He showed me in the real world. I will always have doubters, just because I have a disability. This is not right, but it is what it is. I knew my disability made everything more difficult that should be simple for a person without a disability. I told myself, I will never use my disability as an excuse to give up. Instead, I will use it as my motivation to keep going and push myself to be better. I have something that 80% of people living with a disability live in developing countries can only dream of. It is an opportunity to make an unbelievable life for myself. Like I said before, how can you dream if you are surviving to see tomorrow? You can't. Every day I thank Allah for everything He keeps giving me. One thing that I have noticed throughout my life is if you are a good person and you are a person who works hard, then Allah will send you people to help you when life knocks you down. The perfect example which I can give you is, in February 2017, my dad was killed in Somalia. You have to understand that. On the day I just didn't lose my beloved dad, but also I lost my best friend. It destroyed me. I felt like a broken glass and I thought I will be never the same again. For 3 months, I gave up. I couldn't get out of my bed. But around May, I met a man called Paul Mackenzie and he took me in as his mentee. Ladies and gentlemen, Abdi Omar 2.0 was created. My life changed unbelievably. I want to make my dad proud. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I can see I have a few minutes left. I have 3 tips to live a limitless life. The first and most important tip is you have to be obsessed about getting better. Some people think being obsessed is a negative thing, but it is the best thing could happen to you. For example, you are obsessed about chocolate. It shows you can obsess about something. All you have to do is to change what you are obsessed about. For example, I was obsessed to play a game called Football Manager on my Apple computer. I used to spend hours on it. Talking about it, it makes me ashamed. I guess everyone has their story. From 2017, I said enough is enough, Abdi Omar. Playing game won't help me where to get I want to go in life. Ladies and gentlemen, when I changed my obsession, then my life changed. I worked like I was a man on a mission. I filled myself knowledge from successful people like billionaires. I read over 15 books so far in my life. Self-education will change your life. Don't think for a second, I'm better off than people in third world countries, because this is how you will limit yourself and you will settle what life gives you. Life will give you what you can live on if you have an average mindset. Being average will never benefit you to achieve greatness. I advise you to push yourself because you will push your limits, and if you keep doing it, then you will be limitless. My second tip is to set unbelievable life goals for your life, because nothing is impossible if you commit to your goals. Fill up your calendar with activities that will be beneficial for you. You don't want a white space on your calendar, because on that day you can waste it. Remember, tomorrow is not guaranteed. Make every day count. Stay busy and you will be successful sooner rather than later. My last tip is to believe in yourself. Believing is the powerful ability that you can have against this horrible world, because you will be knocked down many times in life, especially if you are on the path of success. Ladies and gentlemen, I can't give up, because my dreams will appear in front of me. Then I have to get up, because my dreams is my responsibility. If I give up, then they die. I can't live with it. I must keep getting up and fight with everything I have. On that note, I want to finish there, but before I finish, I want to say I would love to stay in contact. You can reach me at abdiomartv@gmail.com or across social media at Abdi Enterprises. Until we meet again, thank you for listening to me.
Abdi, thank you so much for that talk. Amazing. We will be sending out some resources after this session, so I will send all that information about how you can get in touch with Abdi out to everyone sometime later this week. We're having little comments in the chat come through, Abdi, saying brilliant, thank you. There will be a chance to ask questions. If any of you have questions for Abdi, please do put them in the chat and we will pick up on them later. Thank you, Abdi. And now we are going to move to Tony. Tony has got a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm going to ask you to bear with me while I put that up on the screen for everyone. I think we're there, Tony. Can
Great.
everyone see the PowerPoint? Katie, could you just give me a yes if you can see it?
Yep, it looks good.
Yeah, great. I can see it too. Thank you, Pippa. Okay, so hi everybody, my name's Tony Bamforth and I'm going to talk to you today about what staying strong means to me. And here's a photo of me. You can't see my face on today, but here's a photo of me in drag arriving at my first ever DJ gig on my Vespa. This is about 5 years ago, and DJing was one of my lifetime goals, and also being in drag, and particularly driving through the streets of London in full drag was was something that for me was being very strong and being very brave. So I wanted to share that with you. And next slide, please, Pippa. So today I'm going to talk about my journey in life so far. I'm going to talk about what's happened to me, some of the things that have happened to me, and what I've found out in my life. Next slide. I'm going to share with you some stories. Particularly, I'm going to share with you stories about times in my life when I've been wounded, when I've not felt strong. Because these times in particular are times when I've learned lots about myself. And by reflecting on what I did when these things happened and learning from those things, learning a lot about being strong and staying strong, what that means to me. So that's why I'm going to share those with you today. Next slide. First of all, just some questions for you to consider, for you to think about. So what happens when you feel like you've failed? And when you feel weak or not able to face it, whatever's happened? Because actually everybody fails at some point in their life. Quite often, a lot of times. But how do you treat yourself? Are you kind to yourself, or are you cruel to yourself? Next slide, please, Pippa. Next slide.
Sorry, Tony, it's not moving on as
Not
I'm
moving.
asking it to.
Oh,
So I am going to stop the share and come back in again on it.
okay.
I'm afraid it's not doing it.
It's frozen.
It's frozen. So do you have any tips, Tony?
Oh,
Let me see if I can go back.
could you give me?
The host.
Yes, could I make you the host?
Yeah, and then I can share.
Okay, let's see. So I've made you the host, Tony.
Brilliant. Okay, let's see. Right, so let's go back to this one from current slide. Okay, so can you see that, everybody?
That's
Yes.
great.
Yeah. All right, lovely. So what I guess, so my previous question about what happens when you fail. So what I guess is that it's probably different for different people. And maybe it's different for you at different times in your life. And one thing that I think is true is that a lot of this depends on what's happening in our lives, but particularly what's happening with our relationships, with our family and our friends, our relationship with the world in general. And also, maybe more importantly, our relationship with ourselves. So what's going on with ourselves? How we're treating ourselves. I think there are some things that make it easier to be strong in our life and to stay strong. One of those is feeling that we belong, having strong roots in the world, in our communities, and being with other people. So feeling like we're together with other people instead of feeling alone. Because when we have these things, it's easier to feel confident, to be prepared, and to feel like we're accepted and included, because actually we are. And there are also some things that make it a lot harder to be strong and to stay strong. And one of these is discrimination. And there's a list on here on the left-hand side of things which, if you're not these things, then often you will face, well, you're likely to face discrimination in society. So if you're not wealthy, if you're not white, if you're not able-bodied, if you're not straight, if you're not clever, if you're not a man, if you're not a part of the dominant religion in society or the dominant race, and if you're not cisgendered, so if your gender isn't the same as the sex that you were born with, and if you're not any of these things, then what happens is that we start to feel like we're not normal. And then we start to feel pressure to fit in, to try and change ourselves if we can. Because actually what's happening is we're being told that we're not really accepted, we're not good enough as we are. And these things can wound us. They can cause wounds, and they can cause us to wound ourselves. I'm going to talk a little bit about being wounded. So there are different ways that we can be wounded. And when we think about being wounded, most of us think about our bodies. So having injuries in our bodies, so we could have broken bones if we fall and break our leg or whatever. Also, we could suffer from physical abuse or neglect, and our bodies can get wounded because of that. But also we can get wounded in our minds. We can suffer from depression, anxiety and stress, and we can also suffer mental abuse and neglect. Also, we can be wounded in our hearts, and these are some of the ways that we can be wounded in our hearts. If we're ignored, if we feel excluded or silenced, betrayed or unwanted, we can suffer emotional abuse or neglect, feel shamed or ridiculed, even feel hated, even be hated by other people. And when any of these things happen, what often happens to us is that our hearts break. We suffer broken hearts because what happens is we don't feel safe and we don't feel like we belong. And what I'm going to talk about today mainly are these things, because I've been lucky enough not to really suffer many physical injuries, but I have suffered from injuries in my mind and injuries in my heart. So I'm going to talk about some of those experiences for you today. And when I talk through some of these things, you might recognize some of these in yourself. So I'm just going to invite you to consider if these are things that you've experienced too. So let's go back to baby Tony and the child that I was. So when I was a baby, although I had a mum and a dad, actually my parents separated when I was still a baby, and my home wasn't a happy home. My family was also very poor. My mum didn't work and she had 3 children to look after. And my mum was also very isolated. So it was a very sad and my mum was very angry as well. She did her best, but it was very difficult for all of us. So as a baby, I felt ignored, and I also felt unwanted. And also something that happened was that I became silenced. I silenced myself. I didn't speak. One good thing that happened is that my mum took me to see a speech and language therapist when I was 3, because I was still not speaking. And that was one experience of kindness from other people that helped me to develop strength in myself and to feel like I did matter, feel like I did belong. When I was a child and went to school, I had lots of experiences of feeling excluded, feeling unwanted, and feeling ashamed because I was different to other children. So what I did was I armored up. I felt like I needed to defend myself. And so I built a wall outside myself. And that helped me to feel safe to a degree. But what happened was that I actually disconnected from my family and from other people. And maybe this is something that you can relate to too. So as a teenager, I continued to have difficulties in my life. So I experienced bullying, I experienced feeling excluded, unwanted, shamed and ridiculed by other children. I felt like I was hated for being different. Other teenagers used to call me gay, and I didn't know at the time if I was or not, but I felt like something wasn't right with me. And I felt ashamed. I started to internalize that shame that was being fed to me from outside. So I started to build a wall inside and started to hide from myself. I tried to change to fit in, but I quickly found out that that didn't work. So by trying to change and to fit in, it helped me to a degree to feel safe. But what really happened was that in addition to being disconnected from my family and from other people, I also started to disconnect from myself. At the same time, there were people in my life who were kind to me, who tried to show me that I was worthwhile and that I did have a right to be happy and exist. And I thank, I feel grateful every day for those experiences. So when I became an adult, I continued to feel excluded, shamed and ridiculed for being different. But the way I dealt with that as an adult was I started to repress my emotions. I felt like actually I could only rely on myself, that I couldn't really trust other people. And also I started to self-medicate by drinking alcohol. And this again helped me to feel safe to a degree. But what happened when I repressed those emotions I was feeling was that I started to feel very anxious. It created a lot of anxiety in my life because all I was doing was just adding to my armor. Again, I still had people in my life who were being kind to me, who helped me to keep going. And also I started to help myself, and particularly to focus on keeping fit and healthy, to eating good food and looking after my mind as well. Things really started to change for me later on as an adult. This was about 20 years ago when I went on a retreat, a meditation retreat. I learned meditation. And what happened then was I actually started to face the anxiety that I'd spent so long trying to run away from, all the pain in my life. And because of that, my life started to change. I started to open up to myself. But what I found was that this is really painful, because one of the things I realized was that I had this very strong habit of being really cruel to myself. Again, there were still people in my life who were being kind to me. And I continued to help myself as much as I could in my body and in my mind, but not fully. The next big thing that happened in my life that really helped me to grow and learn as a person and change was starting to work with people with learning disabilities. When I first met people with learning disabilities, I felt quite afraid because they were very different, but I quickly realized that actually they were just like me. And when I got to know them, I started to feel understood, probably for the first time in my life, and to feel accepted. And also I learned some really important things from many people with learning disabilities. I learned how to be patient, and I learned what it means to have courage and how important it is to build community. And because of these experiences, I started to focus on helping others as a way to deal with all the pain that I felt. But of course, what happened then was that instead of dealing with the conflict in myself and with other people, I avoided that conflict because I was ignoring my own needs. And of course, what happened then was that led to burnout. I still, to a degree, helped myself and helped to keep myself healthy. And there were still people in my life who were being kind to me. But what happened with the burnout was that I started again to feel anger, to feel fear, impatience, frustration, sadness, depression, anxiety, and stress. All these really difficult emotions came up because I'd just burnt out. And I shut down because I was burnt out. But actually, this was a turning point in my life, because what happened next was I actually accepted counseling because I knew that I needed it. And with that counseling and with finding that state of being burnt out, I started to develop a sense of my own limits, of actually there was stuff that I couldn't do and there was things that I wasn't able to do really. But with that experience, I was also very wary of becoming dependent on other people. And I felt ashamed of burning out. And I was still being very cruel to myself because I felt like I shouldn't have burnt out, that I should have been stronger. And although I was still helping myself to a degree, there was a lot of conflict going on for me. But still, there were people in my life who were being kind to me. What happened next was that by working with a counsellor, I started to feel very vulnerable. And this was actually a step forward for me, because what happened then was that I started to focus on learning about myself. I found a counsellor who was a better fit for me. And I also started to work with a coach. And by working with these people, I started to face the pain that had been built up in my life and all the wounds that I'd suffered. And then I started learning how to be compassionate with myself and why it's absolutely necessary to be compassionate with myself. And then that's the point when I started to help my whole self, my body, my mind, and my heart, with some help from other people, with that kindness from other people that's always been there in my life. And what happened next was that feeling of vulnerability and learning about my limits helped me to learn some humility in my life. And then I started to work more honestly with my counselor and with my coach, and started to accept that actually it's very human to fail. I'm a human being. And this is what human beings do sometimes. And I realized that I needed to change my life, that I could change it. I didn't need to stick with the cards that had been dealt with me. And this all happened because I started to work fully on healing myself, on giving myself what I needed, my heart, my body, and my mind. And what that led to was me actually leaving work, taking a break, taking a leap into the unknown. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I didn't want to continue doing that. I needed to take a step back. So those feelings of vulnerability continued, but what happened next was that I started to feel courageous and compassionate. And I started to learn how to let go. I gave myself time to heal, slow down, and to listen to myself, starting to be kind and aware. I started to be open and to accept myself for who I am, and realized what I'd learnt in my life so far. Continuing to heal myself, my body, my heart, and my mind, this led me to start to connect properly with other people from my heart. And as well as the kindness that I continued to receive from other people, I felt strong enough to start being properly kind to other people. And that felt great. So here are some of the things that I've learned from my efforts to be strong. The importance of belonging and of being myself. of knowing myself and being open to who I am, of being aware of myself, being kind and sensitive to what it is that I need in my life, respecting my limits, and knowing that I need to look after myself first before I can help other people. If I try to help other people without helping myself, what happens is I burn out. And finally, learning to let go and cultivating compassion for myself and acceptance for myself, warts and all. It can often seem as if society doesn't want people who are different to survive. And I think many of us have had those experiences and will continue to. And it can be easy to hate ourselves for being different and to think that we aren't worth it. It takes courage to be kind, especially to ourselves. And here is a quote that I love from Audre Lorde. Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it's self-preservation. And that is an act of political warfare. So here are some of the things that I've learned about staying strong. Staying strong for me means having courage and the vulnerability, and that those two go together, and that having courage means feeling the fear and doing it anyway. Staying strong means being kind to myself, particularly when I suffer. And it means that I accept myself, and that when I do accept myself, I can then learn and change. Accepting that I can't always be strong, and that's okay because nobody's perfect. It also means serving others. Being strong means serving others and accepting service from other people. And when we serve others and accept service, what happens then is that we naturally build communities of compassion. And then we can start to work to change society, to be the kind of world that we want to live in, to be inclusive and kind and compassionate. And staying strong for me also means practicing gratitude for all the kindness that I've received and continue to receive in my life, and experiencing joy in being able to pay that forward, being kind to other people and share with other people what I've learned. So what's Tony doing now? Well, now I'm spending my life teaching others about what I've learned about being strong and helping others to learn from me and to learn from themselves. So now I'm teaching other people about mindfulness, about self-compassion, social mindfulness. And also I'm sharing tools from NLP and coaching to help people to make goals and to develop themselves and to grow stronger. And I've set up my own business called Glow Your Own Way, and I'm running courses for people. And that feels great because I feel courageous and vulnerable every day. So finally, I just want to say thank you, a big thank you to Pippa and Katie for bringing us together today. And I want to thank everybody here today for being patient and listening to my stories here in my presentation. Okay, that's it from me. So what do I need to do to give you the...
If you click on the three little buttons on the right-hand corner of your screen, Tony,
Ooh.
You should see an
Yes.
option. To make someone else the host.
Oh, no.
So another way, Tony, is to go on the participants and look for Pippa.
Yeah.
And then there's at the side of Pippa, the name, there's a, should say more.
Make host.
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant. There we go.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you, Pippa.
Thank you for sharing your story. and for being so courageous and so vulnerable at the same time.
It feels good.
You did it beautifully.
Oh, thank you.
We are now going to move from Tony to Chris. Chris, I can't see you on my screen at the minute.
I'm here.
You're there, I see you. Fantastic. So, with pleasure, I'd like to introduce you to Chris.
Morning, everyone. I'd like to talk about letting go with confidence. And it's very close to my heart now because I'm getting of that age where I've got less time to live than I have. So it polarises some of the problems that people might be facing. So just by way of a quick introduction, my name's Chris and I'm the mum of a son with a learning and physical disability. My background is in nursing and social care, and I went into nursing when I was 15, so it was my profession before I had my son. And I just want to talk about planning for the future and why we're at the point that we're at now. So my son's 45, and looking back more clearly to two things that were going through my head when Ian was born, and one of them was, how am I going to get through this? And the second one was, what's going to happen when I'm no longer around? My son's now 45, and that was one of my first thoughts not many weeks after I brought him home. So it's something that I know is with people the whole time. Well, as we all do, I cried, I lost sleep, I walked around in a different world, and then I said, I've just got to get on with this because that's what I've been given to do. I can remember asking the social worker when he was about 5, is there a bigger picture? Can I put his name down to go into some sort of strategic plan so you know in 20 years' time that he may want to live on his own? And of course the answer was no, that's not available. So you just get on with it and you make your own plans and you fight the system and you cry and you lose sleep, but somehow you just get through it and you get on with it. I am the good, I was very fortunate in as much as I got some money, we got some family money, and we were able to buy a house that my son could rent. And even more fortunately, it's 2 doors down from me. So I'm a good neighbour and the safe house when there's an emergency, but I'm also very close. I'm the one that gets called first when things go wrong or when staff go up sick, but it works. In the main, it works, it's fine. Ian's been in his own house since February 1999. And initially I moved in with him just to make sure that I knew what staff team I wanted, how I wanted them to work. And then we set up our own staff team. So 22 years we've been employing staff through direct payments and getting on with it really, and not asking anybody for anything. But at the very, very beginning, I have to say it was hard, it was difficult. Ian had always had independent living funds, so we've always employed somebody for him to take him out and about, but it wasn't enough and we needed more. So I applied for direct payments. It was a big fight. I was told that he didn't have, oh gosh, I've lost my train of thought now. He didn't have capacity. And because he didn't have capacity, he couldn't have it. I thought, how do they know he's not got capacity? I know he's got capacity. How do they know he's not got it? And then a friend of mine said to me, they have to prove that he doesn't, not that he does. So just go for it. Just actually tell them that they are having to prove this. And if they can't prove it, then they have to assume he has capacity. And as we do, we made a nuisance of ourselves and I put in complaints after complaints. Now, luckily, I'd actually, when I set up Ian's house, I'm a great believer, a great advocate in, you know, Ian has to be his own person in his own right, you know, his own person. So we set it up with a tenancy agreement and all the things that would be the way that somebody would rent a house. I say luckily I did that because, of course, housing benefits started to tell me that maybe because we had bought the house and we had decided it was free and we hadn't put it out in the open market, that basically maybe he wasn't entitled to housing benefit. At the time, I was doing quite a lot of resettlement, and I told them that Health and Social Services were buying houses and they were deciding who was going to go in those houses, and they hadn't put it out on the open market, and all of those people got housing benefit. So 2 years later, I can remember it very well, going to this meeting with the head of social services, big file under arm, adrenaline going through my veins, really ready for the fight. I walked in the room and the head of Learning Disability Services said to me, "Chris, we're going to give it to you." Well, I don't know if you've ever been in that situation, but I just cried. I didn't know what to do. And then I got a bit angry because I thought, I've got all this adrenaline, all this stuff I wanted to say. It was the most weird emotion because I got it, but I just felt that I'd been cheated at the fight in a way. And then what happened is that because I'd got it from social services, I went with the same file under the arm up to housing benefit to have the same fight. And she said, "We're going to give it to you." Oh, going to give it to me. So we got our benefits, and apart from the social worker coming round every year to do the assessment, they left us alone, and we were quite happy. We got on with it. It was great. We had a great time. And then about 2014, I found a lump in my breast, and it was cancer, and I had to go and have a double mastectomy. I'm fine. Ian taught me to be fine. Ian taught me to be strong and just get on with it, which I am. But what it made me realise was I run Ian's service. I manage it. I make sure that his timetable is great, that there's new things going on, that the staff get trained, that cover is available. I do all of that. And then it suddenly struck me that if I was no longer here, I wouldn't be able to do it. So it wasn't even the cancer then. It was, well, you know, I'm getting older and I need to think about how this is going to work in the future. So I decided that the only way forward was to look for commission services. So I went out there and I looked around and I found this very small service that was started up by a sibling whose sister had been in residential. It wasn't right, and so he decided to start up his own service. I thought, great. We started to talk the same language until he got the contract, and then it all started. Somehow the partnership just wasn't there. It just wasn't there. The ability to say, no, this is how it works for Ian. It's worked for 22 years. No, we need to bring our files in. No, we need to bring, no, but that's not what you said. But no, we need to do all these things. That's how it works. And I was totally devastated. I was absolutely devastated. And then what made it worse was I was probably spending more time at Ian's than I'd ever spent because they were sending in staff he'd never seen before. Now, my son's nonverbal. He has a physical disability. He needs people to understand him, and if they don't understand him, he gets frightened. And when he gets frightened, he gets upset. And when he gets upset, he might hurt himself. And so all of this was happening, and I was going to social services and to them and going, this isn't right. You can't send people in just willy-nilly that don't know. You can't do that. Well, what do you expect us to do? And I have to say, even social services said, well, what do you expect them to do? And I said, I expect them to make sure that my son has a safe environment. And you can't do that by sending somebody in who doesn't know. We spent weeks doing support plans that were so detailed, and somebody could pick up step by step and work with it. We did videos, we did everything that you could imagine, but they didn't look at them. They didn't. They walked in with an arrogance that was, I know what I'm doing, I'm going to do it. And that was it. I complained and I complained and I complained, and I thought, oh, this really is so bad, I don't know what to do. And in the end, as luck would have it, I would say, the provider decided I was a nuisance and didn't want to work with me anymore and gave me notice. Now, part of me was a bit angry that they'd been allowed to do that and that nobody had really tackled the real problems that were there. But the other side of that is, of course, social service just had to give me my direct payment back. So they gave me my direct payment back. Some of my staff had transferred over, so they transferred back. So there I was with the same problem again. Was, you know, I'm getting older, I'm managing staff, the staff team, and what can I do about it? And then I had my light bulb moment. Now, in my experience, from the very, very beginning, carers have always been the best source of support and of information. And when Ian was very, very small, we started up a parent group, and we still all talk now, so it's 40 odd years later. And I learned so much more from carers than I ever learned from a social worker. And I thought, well, there's got to be, at the end of the day, everybody who's out there will come to the stage like me, where I think, well, I haven't got as long to go now as I've had. And what am I going to do to make sure that Ian's lifestyle is maintained, that he gets his individual life and it's not part of an organisation that will just come in and put things in, which is where I thought about the co-op. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, this has to be a way forward. This has to be something that as a parent group, we can actually start up a cooperative using individual service fund, which is like, I would say, it's direct payments with your admin on top. Because the real problem with direct payments is you're managing it. And with ISF, what you've got is that element where somebody else can manage it. And that's the bit that we need to capture, is how is somebody else going to manage it when I'm no longer around. So in September, we launched Supporting Together. We now have 30 members. We've got links with all the major managers in social services, with counsellors, and we are talking. I think one of the things that for me is, although we're talking, I'm not sure we're talking the same language. It sort of feels like it's still the same old. It's the same old feeling that it's residential, but it's got a stamp on that says ISF, or it's got a stamp on that says direct payments. And people are quite frightened. When I say people, the system is quite frightened of actually moving into something they don't understand. And probably part of it's money, and part of it is just because it's too much effort. So, you know, there is a big mountain to climb, I believe, but we've started the co-op, as I said. We've got 30 members. For me, it's about all those people that are members in the co-op aren't going to go and find another job. This is it. We're here. Whether we like it or not, we've got it for life, you know. And so people will always engage and want to work through what it is that they need for their relative. Presently, the services, I believe, work against the carer. The amount of carers that I've come in contact with recently that have told me that they've had their service stopped, that they've been told that they were a nuisance, that it's just never, it's never what I call joint working, because I believe people, as you talk to somebody, the first thing they believe is they are the experts. And actually we're the experts. And it's scary and frightening to think they're going to have to listen to us, because it isn't textbook. What it's about is each person as an individual has an individual service. So you can't package it. You have to think outside the box. And that is something that I think that the system presently doesn't give, isn't able to do for whatever reason. So we've set up the co-op. The real aim is, at the end of the day, you know, we all want our son, daughter, relative to move into some independent living situation, whatever that might be. And that might be staying at home, but having a staff team. We've got people wanting to do all sorts of things. But the real thing is, at the end of the day, what we want is, we want to know that there is something that is there that will ensure that it stays there for the individual, that it doesn't get sucked up into something that then changes. That at the end of the day, fellow members will be looking after us in terms of, they will be making sure that the services are running properly. They will advocate that fellow members at our age now, we are going to be trailblazing, and there we've got members who've got children that are 10, 11, 12 that are going to come behind us. So we're working for that generation, and that generation will be working for the next generation, and that we'll all together be able to pull this forward. Now, it might be a big ask, and I'm sure that people are going, well, that sounds, you know, an awful lot. But if you don't believe, Abdi, if you don't believe, you don't get, which I was sort of feeling that was like, I'm going to write that somewhere. So what do we have? As a co-op, we have members, but we have different members. So we've got obviously the individual member, that is the person that is the service is being provided for. We have carer and family members. We also have best interest members, because one of the big things is, if you do not have brothers, sisters, relatives that are going to be around when you are not around, who is it that's going to advocate for your individual? In a way, not just an advocate that's been pulled off the shelf to go into that meeting, but somebody that is truly going to know what the family wanted, are going to advocate in that way. Now, we're not there yet, because all we know is we need best interest members. So these are still lots of ideas we've got. But it does make me realise that, you know, what here now is not fit for purpose. It's not, you know, things have to change, and we need to be sort of the change in that. When we first started up and looked at individual, sorry, have I overgone?
Can I ask you to wind up now? We will send you all the information about the co-op afterwards.
I tried to do a timer, but it didn't.
No, absolutely. What you've been saying is fantastic, and there is lots of comments.
No worries. I do apologise. It did when I started off. It worked brilliantly, but of course I haven't gone to the script at all, and I've just gone in my usual passionate self. So
it's fantastic, Chris. That. We just need to.
But yeah, and the whole reason for asking Pippa if we could come and talk today was, I think that this co-op can spread. I believe that this isn't about a Hertfordshire co-op. I believe this is about a co-op that could be in Leeds, in York, in wherever you are, there could be a co-op. And with that, what we will do is change people's perceptions, which is what needs to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chris. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
As I said, we'll be sending information about the co-op out to everyone, and you'll be able to listen again on the recording. I'd now like to move on to Helen. And Helen's going to be talking to us about circles of support and how they help us stay strong.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much. And I think my bit probably links in with everything that's been said already. So great to hear your work, Chris. I'm in Halifax. My son Jack's 34. He's got profound and complex needs and is deemed to lack capacity. He's also got a number of health challenges and has been living away from home for 18 years. So circles of support, what do we mean when we start thinking about a circle? I guess we think about family, and then going out from there, families that can feel safe, secure, but not always, as Tony was saying. And then beyond family, as Abdi was saying, that family are not only blood related. People we meet and become friends with become part of our friendship circle. But if we've got children with really complex needs, sometimes people come into their lives and our lives through different routes, perhaps differently to ordinary community neighbourhood connections. Our circle of support started very informally. We picked up people through Jack's life, people that connected with Jack and were so devoted and dedicated and almost became part of our family. And that circle has widened out and rippled in the different places that he's lived and we've lived. I think one of the big things about a circle of support, going back to what Abdi was saying, it focuses on strength, connections, which is something Tony was talking about, and what somebody's assets are, passions, setting goals, setting outcomes, which again links to Chris's stuff around support planning. How's the circle of support helped Jack and helped me, and how's it benefited all of the people in it? So informally, a circle of support has enabled us to go on holidays, have a wonderful time, celebrate friendships, connections. It's enriched everybody's life. Recognising Jack as somebody with something to offer people, Jack as an educator, people that we've known have gone on to have careers as a result of interacting with Jack. It's provided huge support to Jack and myself at times of transition and times when I felt incredibly vulnerable and broken, when my marriage ended and Jack, after 6 to 12 months, was leaving home. Some people gathered and very movingly sang Jack. We had a lovely lunch and Jack was helped to move and supported me as he was leaving home. And that has been fantastic. It's helped with more formal decisions, best interest decisions. And we've met with professionals in health and social care, help with best interest decisions about an operation to have a feeding tube replaced or not have it replaced. That was enormously helpful. And there was a phase when we had a much more formal circle of support with a paid facilitator. Liz Leach helped us when we were looking at trying to get a personal health budget for Jack to have a full support team, to have his own home. So we had a lot of in-depth discussions with the CCG, those needed properly minuted, and all that circle of support attended, gave their views, and that was immensely helpful to all of us. Now, in the event, Jack carried on living in the same supported living circumstances, but because of what we'd done, I and the circle have had a lot more involvement working alongside and with that staff team, the PA that he had through the PH, through the personal health budget, and the rest of the staff team. And really, really closely looking at what's been working well, not's been working well for Jack in different circumstances and from different people's perspectives. More recently, in the last few years, and that's kind of intensified through COVID. There've been all sorts of health challenges and have led to health professionals coming in with a real medical model about what they feel would have been in Jack's best interest. And it's true to say Jack's health needs have certainly intensified over recent months. But what that circle of support have given Jack and given me and demonstrated to health professionals, and including a legal team and court of protection, is that there are two ways of looking at things. You can look at best interests, the pros and cons of a certain decision and where you might live, pros and cons of another option of where you might live. And almost any option can be viewed in that way. And having a wonderfully strong circle of support with diverse opinions, but where we respect one another, has really, really helped us through some incredibly complicated, difficult stuff. Supported me, at times challenged me, picked me up, said, no, you're wrong there. Yeah, that has been fantastic. And I guess the best things, there's been some celebration, brilliant stuff. You know, Jack has been best man at the wedding of two members of that circle of support. And that's something we wouldn't have imagined might have happened. And we've shared holidays, Zoom calls together and so on. In terms of future planning, there's information about circle support I think Pippa and Katie will share after. There are enduring circles of support, and it's a wee bit like Chris's model in terms of the co-op, and I think the co-op's great. In fact, I think we've got one locally in the Colne Valley has been set up. But enduring circles of support is that idea of when you're not in the position or around to plan for and make decisions for somebody that you love, then others will take that on. I don't know what the future holds for Jack. That's quite hard to say at the moment. But either which way, I know that circle of support has greatly enriched Jack's life, my life, and those lives of all the people that are part of it. So I'll stop there and thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Helen. We are now going to move swiftly on because I'm aware of time, and we've got Karen and then we've got Katrina. So Karen, can we come to you?
Can you hear me okay?
We can indeed, thank you.
Hi, I know we're running out of time. I will try to make mine brief. So my name's Karen and I have a son called James. So I just wanted to share a couple of points that have really helped James and I to navigate some very difficult situations. So I adopted James when he was about 4.5. He's now 20. And he was born with idiopathic scoliosis, which has been corrected, and also global development delay. But on top of that, what obviously made things much more complicated for James was that he had many trauma layers in there as well. Now, I did know, I have a nursing background. I'd been nursing for a long time, so I didn't go into this, and social work, I didn't go into this with my eyes closed. I went in with my eyes wide open, and I did know that I would come across lots of different types of challenges having a child with learning disabilities and physical disabilities at the time. What I didn't connect with and I didn't appreciate, and I guess because it was a very inward way of thinking of my own belief system and how I was brought up around inclusion, I didn't appreciate that actually the difficulties that we would face would be more the challenges put on us from social constructs, from medical models, education models, just everything around, I guess, in society that made things much more difficult. For James and I, it was a real process of just finding those, you know, adaptions, the creative way of thinking of how to support him to be within life. But what I didn't really connect with was how disabling it would be for him and limiting it would be for him around other people's judgments, opinions, and those limitations. And that was the bit that I don't think I connected with for quite some time. So what was happening was James was going through, obviously, going through growth, and I had every appointment going. I had social workers, adoption, post-adoption teams, lots of different types of medical appointments, education appointments. He was in 2 different schools. One was a special needs, just twinning with a mainstream school. There were so many things that were going on that I spent a lot of time managing, but not realizing how frustrated that I was getting. Communication was low between people, and obviously then managing holistically James's life. And as he was as he was growing and getting older, becoming very aware that without understanding what adoption was, understanding that his trauma was playing out on top of all this, so there was even more care and support that we needed to put in for James. But what I didn't recognize was we were becoming increasingly more isolated, because I was becoming much more exhausted, and with all of everything to juggle, all these aspects to juggle, I couldn't cope with working anymore and managing James's life. But James was my commitment. So what I did was I stepped out of my career at the time, and knew that I was going to take a long break away, which is a massive resource for me as well. Even though it was a very stressful job, it was a huge resource. So I lost a resource there, but that was the best thing to do at that point. But my resilience was getting really low, and I wasn't recognizing where this was coming from. So my frustration and burden of frustration with this was obviously making my world that little bit smaller. And it came to a place where I just kind of crashed and burned, really. And I felt a lot of shame that I couldn't parent, that I shouldn't have done it. And I mean, obviously, James at home, it's completely inclusive. There is no disability there. We've all got a little bit of something going on, and our house is just, everybody fits in. Everybody is as they are. But then step out of that, it felt a kind of an unrealistic expectation. So this kind of, I hit a wall, and I really had this huge kind of emotional outpouring, and I took myself off and I remember this day really well. I took myself off for this long walk. James at school, Lennon, my other son, was at school. Had this day to myself, which was like completely unheard of, but I think just perfect timing. And I went off, and I completely recognized that it wasn't my parenting, it was the influence from the outside world, but I was absorbing that. So I wasn't being the filter really between the outside world and James, because I'd lost that resilience, and because I hadn't been feeding it. It's, I have to feed that resilience and those resources. And so in that moment, I remember sitting on this rock, and it's a place called the Honesty Box, just in Hebden Bridge where I live, and overlooking the valley, this beautiful valley. And I remember sitting there and just really accepting that I was okay, and that what I needed to do was learn to navigate what was going on, because the conflict that was constant, the anticipation anxiety, the anxiety that I was living, the lack of sleep, the worrying about when it gets older, because I don't even know how to manage the now at the moment. And in that moment, acceptance that happened, that was such an emotional shift, and I practiced that to this day, acceptance. And I realized that acceptance isn't this passive kind of feeling that I guess I thought it was. It's this active process, which is recognizing the situation isn't okay. I'm not happy with it. Acceptance didn't mean that I can't change it. It was just, and I'm not enabling it. But what it did was take me out of this such low place where I felt ashamed, because I couldn't do it for James. I couldn't be what he needed me to be, because I wasn't getting that support. But with that acceptance, I really recognise that not everybody in this world is going to connect with James the way I connect with him. But it's my job to help him get his voice out there, but in a very different way. And I needed to learn what that way was, because I was feeling frustrated, acting frustrated. I was beginning to, this conflict that was inside, I was beginning to play that out within meetings. So I wouldn't get that positive resolve, or I'd feel so frustrated and unheard afterwards, but realized I'd stopped really speaking up because I felt really squashed down by that entire system of it all, basically because I felt really exhausted. So what I did was I really recognized, sort of sitting up there, it was this most amazing time sitting up there, and really recognized how baggy my boundaries had become. And within those kind of that bagginess, what I'd done was I'd stopped speaking up and speaking out. So by fusing that acceptance with those boundaries, and just putting a couple of new ones in place, and really daring to speak out and really daring to expand, what I did was absolutely recognize how isolated I had become, but also because I was so tired and so exhausted and almost like not trusting really genuine support that was coming my way, because I just couldn't see it at that point. But what it did was it created this ability to connect again. And we've talked a little bit about this in Tony and Helen have mentioned this as well, which is it is about finding those connections and recognizing that I wasn't on my own, and having those kind of different dynamics in my life, and coming back to bringing us together. I'd worked with Katie a long time ago. I'd started working with Katie on Visits Unlimited, but then reconnecting with Katie again obviously gave me much more networks and put me in touch with more communities, more connections, but people that had so much and that wealth of experience that actually I did not have to reinvent the wheel. I did not have to have the solution to everything. But I got to that place where I thought, it's all me, it's everything. I've got to provide everything. I've got to do everything. I've got to be James's everything, because no one else seems to understand. But because my entire world was all about meetings and appointments and paperwork, where it's often reflected on James on his worst day of his life, I'd kind of lost that hopefulness in a way. But opening my world that little bit more has really kind of helped both of us find that resilience again, and actually really sit with us both moving forwards and growing. I mean, James now is 20, he's living in supported living, he's at college, he's holding down a job. And these are the things that I was always told he'd never do. And one of, I guess, the difficulties in the beginning with having, as my experience, I know everyone's experience is different, but speaking from the eye, when I adopted James, it's a really hard concept to kind of get across for people to understand. But it was like, because he was adopted, he was everybody else's child, not mine. And that was a big thing that I had to overcome, to claim him as mine and to be his advocate. Because the people that thought they had great intentions are the professionals and community members, because, you know, members of community and family with their great intention of, well, I've got children and I'll show you how I did it. And it's like, this is a very different situation. I spent so much time learning James's language, but no one else knew it like I did. But then what I wasn't doing was sharing his language. So as much as my intention was to help James to grow, I wasn't doing it in the most positive way in the beginning, because I felt on guard and I had to tolerate quite a lot. But once I stopped tolerating and I put those boundaries in place, but accepted where we were, I was able to then become much more open-minded and be able to navigate situations, make decisions better and much better choices. And James's life is massive, and mine is again now, which has been phenomenal. So for me, the key points of navigating really difficult situations from my perspective was learning to stop fighting what wasn't there to fight, accepting where I was and putting those new boundaries in place. So that's
Karen.
very brief. I am sorry, it's very brief.
Karen, thank you so much. That was beautiful. And once again, there are lots of lovely comments in the chat.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Karen. Katrina, last but not least.
Thank you very much. Katie, Pippa, Abdi, Tony, Chris, Helen and Karen. Honestly, thank you so much. I've just sort of sat in awe here. My name's Katrina Farnell. I'm a disabled woman. I became disabled in 2012 due to Cauda-Equina syndrome, and I now live with something that's called autonomic dysreflexia. I have carers with me all the time because it can be it's a life-threatening condition. But today I'd like to talk to you about the power of kindness. It's something that has sustained me, and I'd like to share with you why. This is what I've written. The pandemic of COVID-19 has forced us all to slow down. In early 2019, we were all driving down that motorway of life with our minds on our individual destinations. But then COVID-19 hit and it forced us all to slow down and to think collectively. It became impossible not to see the other drivers on the road. The imbalance between the drivers became undeniable. Why were some people driving fast cars and others crawling their way in rusty, burnt out bangers? In this analogy, I'd like to say that all the people in the fancy cars had opened the doors to the people who were struggling, but most of them didn't. I personally think it's out of fear. The reason we don't all share cars in the first place, and we don't have the same opportunities. The fear of change is just too much for some. I believe fear is a bit like a cancer of the soul. It disconnects you from others and can dominate your every thought. I believe that the cure for this disease of fear is kindness. Here's why. When I was 9 years old, I was taken under the wing of my mum's friend, Jerry. My father was terminally ill, so I spent a lot of time at Jerry's house with her young baby, Maya. I loved Maya in a way that I'd never loved anyone before. It was a mix of a desire to protect her and unconditional love. And it's such a hard time in my life. Jerry and Maya brought such a pure joy to my heart. It was incredible to watch Maya grow. Then when I was 12, my brother and sister-in-law told me they were going to have a baby. I was worried. I couldn't comprehend there being any more love in my body to give to another person. I seriously stressed about whether I was going to be a good auntie or not. Then Harry was born, and as if by magic, I found an abundance of love and appreciation that I could never have imagined before his birth. And so my life continued, with 7 nephews and nieces, 7 godchildren, all my friends that came into my life. My life even opened up to the possibility of romantic love. Looking back to the time when I thought I had no room left at 12 years old, it was like the Big Bang had occurred deep within me and a universe of love just appeared. It was like an explosion of discovery and love, and that continued. Some people build big walls around their love to protect it, so they don't get hurt. And I definitely get that. Being hurt and losing something or someone is incredibly painful. Some question whether the love was worth the pain. And then they shield themselves from getting hurt again in the future. And I guess that mirrors the same quandary that some disabled people grapple with. Is my physical pain that I endure worth it? I'm lucky that my answer has always been a resounding yes. Just like that 12-year-old girl thought there was no love left before Harry. I'd found some pretty sad periods after becoming disabled when I questioned whether there was any life left for me. And I reached some of the lowest of those. But then a transcendent shift occurred within me, where my life blossomed into directions I never knew possible. I'd been in bed for 16 months. I couldn't sit up or stand because I had a CSF leak. So I had to be in the dark for about 16 months. And after I'd had the surgery for that to fix it, I began using my voice and my experience to help others. And I didn't think I had anything of worth to give to others. But I just used my passion for life to try and help others. And I did help people with the same condition as me at the Cauda-Equina Syndrome Association. And I finally understood that no matter the good or the bad, I'd always be able to find the kindness for others, and that would sustain me. I realised that kindness was a bit like my superpower, that it fueled my spirit. And as time moved on, I began to love myself more because of my kindness. The biggest change in my life happened when I shone that light of kindness inwards, as many people have said before here today. The unconditional love that I had always given to my loved ones finally started to encompass myself, and I became stronger when I stopped expecting myself to be perfect. I had never expected those around me to be perfect, so why was I expecting myself to be? Being kind to myself was the most important kindness of all. It's something I have to actively work on though. Through kindness, my life has become so much richer and vibrant. And no, I don't have a thick skin and I'm not tough, but my thin skin allows my love and my light to diffuse into the world and directly to those around me. And the connection we make, as we've talked about before, the connection, it's a beautiful feeling. Ram Dass talks about being able to walk down the street and just feel love for everyone you meet. And I connected to that idea in such a profound way. My physical pain makes a lot of the time hard. And mixed in with some emotional pain, it's harder still. But I like to think of it like this. The deeper the pain drills inside me, the more room for the love and the light to flood in. Kindness can all too often be seen as a negative. You're too nice, you're too soft. People will take advantage, some will say. But if my love and kindness is infinite, as I think it is, then why am I holding it back for just those who are deemed worthy of it? And who am I to judge who deserves kindness and who doesn't? I don't think that an ability to be hard helps anyone deal with the trauma and pain of disability. Kindness, on the other hand, it spreads joy. It makes me personally feel strong. And even if I'm in the worst medical situation possible, if I am able to speak, I am able to say thank you. I will be kind. That strength, resilience, and power of appreciation is something that has come to me with time and perspective, and a lot of deep assessments about what is important to me in life. I'm often told that the world is complicated, that things are not as simple as that I can be naive in my thinking. Well, I reject that notion. I think that kindness is always the answer. If everyone chose the kind path, imagine the world we'd live in. Our current world doesn't yet fully see the value of kindness. And if I were ever to have children, which I hope one day I will, I won't be telling them stories that I was told, with plot lines of women who have to lose the voice to marry a prince, or gets captured and imprisoned by a beast until she falls in love with him. And I won't be singing clap handies till daddy comes home, daddy's got pennies and mummy's got none. I'm not repeating and reaffirming these old prejudices that don't model kindness. I'm not going to take part in teaching our children to aspire to be the prince or the princess in a story. Many of my friends may think I'm hypocritical by saying this because I love Disney, which again, I'm proud of. But the characters that I admire in those stories are not the classical protagonists. And this is a common theme that I found in a lot of stories. I love the fairy godmother who wants to help Cinderella, or Mrs. Potts and Lumiere in Beauty and the Beast, who treat others around them kindly. I never wanted to be Dorothy in Wizard of Oz. I always wanted to be Glinda. And in Les Miserables, for example, Eponine's sacrifice born out of love is one of the most beautiful love stories I've ever seen. But her part in the story is all too often forgotten. Why are the kind ones in a story always a side character? I want to start a revolution of kindness, of choosing love over hate, of celebrating and cherishing our differences. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing unique about me or my story of disability and long-term illness. I'm not some warrior princess or anything. I'm just an average person dealing with a condition that pretty much sucks, but I want to use it to help others. Life deals everyone some hard lessons, and I feel like I've been in the darkness more times than I can count. When you're in the darkness, you can't see others, but they're there, and I'm sure we've all been there. I've been blessed that each and every time that I'm at that dark place, I can look inside myself for the light of kindness, which illuminates my way. I want to share that what I have with others, with you, because I firmly believe that in the process of sharing, connection is made and we become stronger together. Thank you. Thanks.
Katrina, I don't have words, thank you. I would like to be part of your revolution of kindness, please.
Yes, everyone is welcome.
I think we would all like to join.
I'm just seeing some of the comments. Thank you.
Yes, there's lots of comments in the chat. Katie, can I pass to you just to...
Yes, it's hard to know what to say after all those talks, which have been so moving and so profound, and each one a little bit different, but all intermingled and all about, you know, love, kindness, respect, acceptance, overcoming the barriers each one of us faces every single day, whether we're a parent, carer, or a disabled person. We've got so many barriers. So I just feel extremely moved, Pippa, by each of the talks that are really, really important. And as you were all speaking, I was thinking, we need another session just on that. We need a session on the co-op. We need a session on circles, on Tony's work, on Karen's work. Definitely a session on kindness. Abdi will be in touch with you, I'm sure. So all of you have brought so much to this amazing session. And yeah, I really, that's I think all I can say, because I'm so pleased to have been able to bring you together.
Just to echo what you've said, Katie, thank you all so much, and thank you to everyone who came along. I'm sorry there's lots in the chat, and we will be saving the chat, and there will be a recording. We don't have time now to go into a full discussion. Please do put any final thoughts and reflections in the chat.
Maybe we could go around and say one thing we've taken before we finish the session, because we're heading off, aren't we, into the summer holidays, into no lockdown. So it'd be really nice.
Let's do that. I'm going to ask you to be really quick with your feedback, but I'm just going to go across the screen here. Tash, one word from you, what you've taken from the session.
Oh, but can I just say that the Autism Family Care Certificate, which I sent you, is live now, and can you pass that on? So one thing I wanted to say, which was missed from this, and I'm sorry, I'll be as quickly as I can. I'm trying to say this. being involved in the future care and development of training to make of people, making sure that disability people train the future people. So we're involved in the planning and then taking part of that in the future is another way forward.
Yeah. Thank you, Tash. Thank you. David, a word from you.
Right, sorry I was late. I had another meeting, but beside the point, powerful.
Thank you, David.
Okay.
Thank you. Caitlin.
Yeah, I just want to say it was really inspirational hearing you all speak, and I really appreciate everything. Like the kindness to yourself and taking that time to put yourself first and not be so negative, I think, yeah, really hit home. Thanks.
Thank you, Caitlin. Andrew.
I think for me, it just explored the power of sharing, both as an individual when you share with others, and the power to listen and let people share stuff with you. And learn so much. So Abdi and all the other speakers, thank you so much. Well done.
Thank you, Andrew. Judith.
Yeah, I was going to talk about the sharing side too. I find it very empowering, especially I woke up this morning feeling not so good about a few things that have gone on the weekend. And one particular point had huge resonance for me. I feel I've got to do it all on my own, because I don't trust very many people. And that's a tricky one. I'm working on it.
Thank you, Judith.
Chaos assessment.
Mary. Oh.
Absolutely superb. Brilliant.
Thank you, Mary. Jane?
Yeah, really identified with lots of points all the speakers made, particularly on maintaining boundaries and building resilience, and was really interested in what Chris had to say about her co-op experiences as well, and absolutely vital to maintain kindness in this world, whatever is fired at you. So many thanks to all.
Thank you, Jane. Anne?
Me.
You, Anne.
My son thinks that's very funny, by the way.
Hi, I'm Anne.
One word. What you thought?
Totally. 10 out of 10 for each of the presentations. Inspiring.
Thank you, Anne. Thank you, Anne. Bryony.
Yeah, all the presentations were inspiring, and also the thing is, like, of not reinventing the wheel, especially when we have younger children. And what I've heard from Christine, I mean, the knowledge, and that's what I'm going to take away. The knowledge is power, and I hope we get a session on the co-op, and it's like the ones with younger children paving, I mean, getting the knowledge from the ones who have older children and then sharing it with the ones yet to come. Yeah, because there's always going to be autism or disabilities, and just passing on that knowledge. Yeah, and making life, I mean, getting the potential out of our children, that's so important. Thank you.
Thank you, Bryony. Thank you. Liz.
Empowering, I would say.
Empowering. Thank you.
I've missed bits of it because I've been having to deal with everything going on around me, but the bits I've heard are just amazing. Yeah.
It's been lovely to have you here, Liz. Thank you for coming. Kalindi. We're just waiting for you to unmute. There you go. You're unmuted now, Kalindi.
Unmuted. It's inspiring. I've been dipping in and out as well because I've had to take a phone call. But what I've heard, yeah, it's been inspiring.
Have you done it? Can hear you.
think so.
We can hear you. We can hear you as well, Paul.
Hiya, Paul. Yeah. We were taking a phone call meeting, so it was a bit. So I didn't want to distract. But,
Thank
yeah.
you, Kalindi. It's been lovely to have you here. Taras. Can you unmute yourself? No, and then we've got someone else without a name here. Would you like to give us one word?
That's it, Pippa.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. Thank you all so much.
I didn't get my one word.
Oh, sorry, I didn't go to the speakers, Chris.
Oh, okay.
I didn't, but give us a word. Give us a word, Chris.
Knowledge.
Knowledge. Fabulous. We will be in touch. We will send the links out, and there'll be a recording. We'll send you a link to that. We are planning more sessions moving forwards. We do have some work on anxiety, which Karen is leading on. We'll be in touch with you about that. Big thank you to everyone for coming. Big thank you to all the contributors. You're all fantastic. We love you all. And see you again soon.
Can I do the anxiety one?
Yes.
You can take part, definitely.
I'm going to need that, aren't I?
Thank you, everybody, and see you soon.
See you soon.
Peter, are you in a rush to rush off, or you've got another meeting now?
Should we switch off the recording?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, we've got another meeting